So the issue I wanted to cover in today's video concerning the country that I chose to cover, which was Zimbabwe, was the issue of climate change. Now, as hopefully most of us are aware, climate change is a global issue. No country, whether they be rich or poor, landlocked or having large amounts of sea lining coasts, is spared from even the smallest negative effects of climate change. And of course, Zimbabwe is no different. Now, if you know your geography even a little bit, then you would know that Zimbabwe, which is just north of South Africa, is a landlocked nation, landlocked state. So while it may not have the same issues as, say, the United States does with rising sea levels, which is one of our many issues related to climate change, however, Zimbabwe doesn't have that same issue. It still has its own issues regarding climate change. Now, according to the United Nations Development Program, climate change impacts in Zimbabwe are related to water supply and food security. The United Nations Development Program is responsible, at least in part, for promoting the United Nations Development Goals that we looked at. So what they mean by water supply and food security, I think most of us can guess, but just to spell it out, Zimbabwe is prone at sometimes to droughts. Now, because of climate change, these droughts will get worse and have become more frequent. So it's kind of it's going bad in two different directions. So because of this, the crops upon which Zimbabwe relies have been seriously harmed, and their production is far lower than they would be if climate change were not seriously impacting the state. However, while directly climate change might be affecting Zimbabwe's water supply and food security, the issue of water supply brings another issue to Zimbabwe. Now, because what they mean by water supply is a clean water supply. So since climate change is lessening the amounts of causing there to be less clean water, clean drinkable water for Zimbabweans to use, that would mean that they would be forced to use dirty water or water that came from suspect wells. And what this brings is the increased risk of spreading of infectious diseases, including, but not limited to, HIV, AIDS, and malaria. Now, this is all pretty bad, but Zimbabwe isn't the only state on Earth facing these problems. And to be honest, as one individual or as like a small group of maybe 30 individuals who are just students at IU, there isn't probably a whole lot that we can do to we can't stop climate change all on our own. So the best that we can manage is by supporting specifically the United States, but just generally world governments in promoting green policy choices, that being moving away from fossil fuels, having more sustainable development and more sustainable crops. So while there's no one specific thing each of us can do to help mitigate climate change, aside from contacting our representative officials, there is something that we can do as a society. We have to see a culture change and become a more accepting culture to fighting climate change.